everyone. I'm Laura Brandao, the chair of the MBA New Jersey Women's Committee, and I am joined by my fellow MBA New Jersey board member, Taylor Stork. He is the EVP and Chief Operations Officer at Developers Mortgage. And today we are going to learn Taylor's how and why. First off, Taylor, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you for being a MBA New Jersey board member. It's great to have you on the team. Now, if I have learned anything about the mortgage industry, it's that we all have an interesting story as to how we first came in. So to kick us off, Taylor, please share with all of us, how did you first come into our industry?
Laura, I think you're giving me way too much credit for having anything interesting to say whatsoever. But I will tell you how I ended up in this industry. I went to school in San Diego and I graduated with a degree in finance. And I thought that somehow maybe I would land on Wall Street. But I never really figured out a plan for how I was going to get there. One day I realized it was time to graduate from college, and my sister had been a loan officer, and then she had been a branch manager, and she'd been pretty successful with it. And she had hired her replacement and trained up a future rising star branch manager. Her name was Renee, and Renee found out that I was graduating from college, and she grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and yanked me into the mortgage business. That is quite literally how it happened. I started off as a sales assistant for a wholesale account manager at World Savings.
Wow, World Savings. That certainly brings us back also, right there, just saying that name. They had a phenomenal program back at that time.
They did, and I learned a ton, and it was the beginning of what has turned out to be a very wild, very interesting, and very educational ride.
That's great. So let me ask you, let's say here we are, we're in the season of college graduation, right? In the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a new group of graduates coming through in 2021. What piece of advice would you give to someone that might be starting out and looking to come into the mortgage industry? Looking back now on your career, what was something that you wish you knew back at that time?
What I wish I knew back at that time is too long for this interview. So I'm going to try to pick one or two things that I would tell somebody new. You know, when I got into this business, I did not get in for the reasons. Actually, when I got into this business, I got into it for a paycheck. And I think that's why a lot of people get into this business. And I didn't understand the impact at that time that I could actually have on people's lives. And it took a long time for me to start to fundamentally get that the very nature of creation of wealth for most people starts with what we do. We create the means to own an asset that becomes more valuable. And there are very few other ways that you can do that with individuals in our society who don't already have means. So it took me a long time to understand that, and to understand that there was an intrinsically valuable aspect of our business. For a long time, I felt like I was just a car salesman, to be honest. And then one day I was like, wait a minute, I'm not selling cars. I'm helping people have homes. And these people that have these homes create wealth, and they have children, and they have a place for their children to sleep at night that's safe, and a way to create stability, and a way to participate in the economic growth of our country. And so then it stopped being about the paycheck, and it started being about something that was just a little bit more noble than a way to make money. But so I would tell people. And I don't even know if this is good advice for how to get into the mortgage business, but realize that what we do is more than just charging a few points and making a commission, or pushing some paper and getting a deal closed. Realize that the names behind the loan number and behind the LTV and the DTI, they're real people with real problems, and they might not even know how badly they actually do need your help. But the service that we provide is the thing that has enabled this country in many cases to come out of major economic, travesties and challenges. And everybody says housing leads us out of recessions and depressions. And here we are pulling out of this pandemic thing largely through the influx of capital and cash created by home refinancings.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. Man, you said so many great things there, Taylor, and let's kind of break through a few of those. Number one, it's interesting that when we all get into the industry, it was a job, right? So all of us, whatever direction we came in, it was a job at that time. But what I found is this is one of those industries that you either love it or man, you go running for the hills in the beginning because you're like, nah, this is okay. There's a lot going on here, a lot of different components, right? But for those of us that fall in love with it, there is so much more to it, right? We are changing lives every single day. But when you look at the transaction, from a realtor standpoint, it's like a sexy transaction, right? Because people can go online and they can search and they can vision themselves in the homes and, their kids playing in the backyard and the pool and everything else. And then you have the mortgage person. That's the financier, right? Giving them the largest debt they'll ever have in their lives. But yet, what you just said, creating generational wealth, right? Working with an asset that we know that will increase at some point in time, right? You never know when or the cycles but it will, absolutely will. But yet our component of it, people look at it as, well, like you mentioned a car salesman. Well, you guys are giving away, you're putting people in debt. And we're changing lives and we're bringing families home. And it's interesting that this new generation that I mentioned graduating college right now, Gen Z at this time, they think more mission-based. They think more, how is the job that I'm doing going to change the world? We have that. That's something that we offer because it is life-changing, us putting people into these homes. So I love that, Taylor. That is great. So tell me, during this journey, as you've come into the industry and you've, worked through many different places, has there been any people that kind of helped you along the way of what did they do? How did they guide you? What was that leadership style that kind of helped you progress on your path?
Oh, boy. Okay, that's, again, this is a 3-hour interview and I'm going to consolidate it into a few, as much as I can. So I've had many people that have guided me and influenced me. I've had multiple mentors. I've had so many people that have helped me. I'm afraid to name one lest I not name all of them. But I'm going to tell you that there's been one person in particular who took me under her wing when I was about 27 years old. I was young. I was arrogant. Arrogant doesn't begin to describe the level of cockiness that I exuded. I was too damn smart for my own good. And I was also a bit of an alien in a new land. I had moved from San Diego to the East Coast and suddenly found myself working in the heart of Manhattan on 42nd Street. And my boss is a woman that many people know, and some people will know exactly who I'm talking about. But she became my mentor, and she was much more than my mentor. She was my boss, and she was my mentor, and sometimes she was my guardian. And sometimes she was my protector, and sometimes she was I'm just going to tell you, sometimes she was my other mom, letting me know when I was out of line and putting me back into line. She really helped shape my framework of what leadership needs to look like. She also helped me figure out that I really wasn't that wonderful and great and needed to focus less on all of, my 20-something, 30-something attributes and focus more on how to help people and get the job done. So the answer is yes. I had a profoundly influential figure that made my career. And when I say made my career, I don't mean that this person pulled levers in order to maneuver me into the right spots. I mean that this person fixed some things in me so that I could go on and be more successful than I think I otherwise would have been.
Isn't that amazing, the effect that people can have on us? Now, that effect is positive or negative, right? How you approach things in leadership and in management has a positive or a negative effect. So, Taylor, I'm curious, what were a few of those leadership lessons that you actually learned that you now use on your own teams?
I learned that one of the things I learned from her was to find ways to utilize, to leverage people so that they could demonstrate their own strengths.
Ah.
She was extraordinarily good at figuring out what certain people were good at and then putting them into position to really shine a spotlight on those strengths. She would do this thing. She would do this thing where she would pair up two different managers and she'd make us trade offices for a week. Huh. And a manager that was better at one thing would manage my office, and then I would go manage the office of that same manager so that we could inadvertently step into one another's shoes and learn from one another through the echo of the work that the first had already done.
Wow.
Right. So, yeah, it was an interesting thing. And it caused us to get exposed to a new group of people and to really broaden our horizons, because you get shocked out of your routine and you get shocked out of your normal relationships, and it's like you're suddenly in a new job when you're really not in a new job. So she would do this thing where she would make us trade offices for like a week, not for a day or 2 days, for like a week, and it was neat. She would shuffle us around into different roles. She would give us different responsibilities to force us to expand our horizons and try new things. And that, I think, was one of many of her great talents as a leader.
Wow, I love that. Now, Taylor, we have a MBA New Jersey Women's Committee, and I'm curious, it just so happened that the person that you picked, was a mentor to you, was a woman. I know you've worked with many wonderful people and lots of great people through your career, but I'm curious, do you see that there is an added benefit of having all different types of everything, right? Total diversity and inclusion. What do you see the benefits are on a team of having all of that different diversity and inclusion within your company?
That's a pretty loaded question, Laura. So here's what I'm going to tell you. And this is something that you and I have talked a little bit about in the past. I actually have a fundamental belief that an organization is stronger because of diversity. And I'm going to speak directly to gender diversity. I'm going to stay away from some of the other kinds of diversity that are out there that are in focus today. But I want to speak specifically to that because of the content of this discussion, and because of the Women's Committee, which I actually was aware that there was a Women's Committee, and I think it's great. So I have a core belief that men like myself, or men not like myself, but I have a core belief that we do better when we have women around us, and when we have female influence on us. And I can speak to that personally from my perspective. All my career, I've had a strong, with a few exceptions, I've had a strong, powerful female influence in my career. My first real boss was a woman, and she got me started. And my mentor, and now who I loosely refer to as my second mom, had a huge impact on my career. And I've had other strong women who were my leaders, or my influencers, or my mentors. So what I found for me personally is that when there is a mix and balance of the masculine and the feminine together, I find that it creates a healthier environment that is more conducive to growth. Um, I find that when you are too far out of balance in either direction, I find that we get less balanced ourselves. When there's, and I'm just going to say it in plain terms, when there's too many guys involved, we get more guy-like.
Right.
And when there's an imbalance of too many women, I think you get a little bit more woman-like.
Yep.
But when we have a good balance amongst us, I think we all kind of keep each other on better behavior and more aware of one another. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's good for business.
Yep.
I'm also going to tell you that I don't think I would have experienced the success that I have in my career. Everybody has different levels of success. But I don't think that my personal experience would have been nearly as good if I didn't have women in more senior positions helping pave the way for me to shine and do good works. It was because there were women in senior roles and that were in positions to lead me that I could be led in the first place. And I know that to be true.
That's awesome. And kudos. And you know, we're on the same page. You and I, you know that we're on the same page with this. And I had told you that there is a speaker that I have met and become friends with of a book called Gender Physics. This woman actually proved that biologically, we all have female and masculine energy. All of us, right? At certain times when something happens, you know, when someone cuts you off on the highway, oh, you probably got the masculine energy at that moment, right? Or when you see something beautiful and all of a sudden you have this sense of you, that's probably the female energy. It makes no difference if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't make any difference. It's just depending on what's happening at that time, it's balance that makes the key to having an effective team and having proper leadership. Those that can control it equally is where success and fulfillment comes in. So you're 100% correct. It doesn't even matter so much about what biological gender you are. It's always keeping that balance because it makes it so that you can share ideas. It's so that you can support each other collaborating, right? And you can work together and you can support each other going forward. So at times, yes, we all compete. We all want to, you know, be number one. We all want to move, but we're doing it not in a cutthroat way. We're doing it in a way that's healthy within an organization, right? So all of that is actually just balance between male and female energy. And I love that you have experienced this in your own career. I mean, it's incredible, especially at a time where there probably weren't as many women leaders at that time.
There definitely were not.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to be inside of the conversation and aware of it while it was taking place. It was interesting to observe some of the unique challenges, I think, that presented themselves as a result of the imbalance, and how it was interesting to be behind the scenes, behind the curtain, so to speak, and observe it and become trusted to the point that I could be behind the scenes and behind the curtains. Because let's face it, I also am potentially a threat, right? I could be somebody that's going to take over your job one day and do those kinds of things. And it takes a great deal of trust, I think, to get to the point that you could say, okay, I trust you and you trust me. And I, you know, I'll put my career in your hands. And in some ways, you're going to put your career in my hands. Yeah. And that actually physically, literally did happen. I can tell you stories and stories and stories.
Wow.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It's really a remarkable story unto itself. But having been able to be behind the scenes and behind the curtains and watch impact and watch reaction and see these things as a man who was there to observe a world that I can't possibly participate in. I can't possibly be part of it. I can observe it, but I can't be part of it, right? For me. So yes, it is very impactful.
Thank you so much, Taylor.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it.